Q2 schools on edge across the state and city this morning.
We still took all of the procedures. We practiced the procedures.
Threatening calls flood in, only for it all to be another hoax, plus providing a boost for Billings.
The hope is that this type of space brings in some more regional conventions or conventions that hadn't ever been in Billings.
A new and improved convention center is set to open in the Magic City with the hopes of becoming a regional hub. And if you've ever dreamed of owning a ski area, now's your chance as Wyoming's Sleeping Giant is up for sale. The MTN 430 News starts right now. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday. I'm Russ Riesinger. A scare for Billings schools today. A district-wide lockdown was put into effect this morning at city schools and multiple daycares across the area. It all started at West High around 10 after a threat was made to the schools. Billings police responded there before securing the schools district-wide as a precaution. Once secured, officers were able to determine that the threats were not credible, and the lockdowns were ultimately lifted around 11. The threats actually came in all across the state, and due to the patterns, Billings police believe the schools were targeted as a hoax or a swatting incident.
Essentially, I can say at this point that we are confident that these incidences through here was a hoax. They were swatting incidents. They're not credible, and all schools have gone to normal operations at this point.
We still took all of the procedures. We practiced the procedures so we can respond in any situation that could involve a threat to our faculty and staff and our students.
The threats originated from a VPN address originating overseas, another sign of swatting. No students or staff were harmed. It's a crime drama you might expect to see on television. A CEO gunned down on a New York City sidewalk and his killer still on the loose. This evening, Jared Hill has new images of the suspect from police, and we want to warn you, video of this crime is disturbing.
A sign advertising a $10,000 reward for information leading to the shooter of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson is taped to a light pole outside a hostel on New York City's Upper West Side. Police also released these images from the hostel showing the suspect's face. It's the clearest look so far of the man the NYPD has been hunting since Wednesday morning.
We will not rest until we identify and apprehend the shooter in this case.
Police are using a trail of digital breadcrumbs to track Thompson's brazen killer. Found at the crime scene, words written on the shell casings: deny, defend, and depose, similar to the 3 Ds of insurance, a phrase used by opponents of the industry.
Based on the evidence we have so far, it does appear that the victim was specifically targeted. But at this point, we do not know why.
Cameras at a Starbucks captured enough of the suspect before the shooting to run facial recognition. Police say he paid in cash. CBS News law enforcement contributor Rodney Harrison says the suspect is experienced with a gun.
Just take a look at his stance and how he had the gun pointed out. He knew what he was doing. The gun jams. He's able to deal with the malfunction. So it looks like he's very proficient with how to use a firearm.
Harrison says the NYPD solves about 87% of the cases in this part of the city, so it may only be a matter of time for this one. Jared Hill, CBS News, New York.
A Magic City makeover is nearly complete. The new and improved Billings Hotel and Convention Center will be unveiled to the public December 11th. The nearly $5 million project features an additional 15,000 square feet and several technological upgrades. Tonight, David J. gets a sneak peek inside a building that developers expect to be packed in no time.
The entrance to a lot of events at the Billings Hotel and Convention Center used to be right over there, and now they have this big building which is next door, so they're hoping to host a lot of big events coming next year, and the first big event will be gymnastics in January.
Yes, Monkey!
Gymnasts train and practice at Magic City Gymnastics, which will host the Glitter and Grit Classic Gymnastics Meet at the new 15,000 square foot building.
We're going to fit great in here.
Darcy Fruin is owner of Magic City Gymnastics, and her club has not hosted meets in the past because it has never worked out with schedules at other venues in Billings. This facility has a ceiling that ranges in height from 17 feet to 25 feet.
Mostly the uneven bars, so we need at least an 18-foot clearance so the girls don't hit their toes on the ceiling.
14-foot garage doors we really give for gymnastics or anything, give them the capability of bringing in their equipment easily.
Jace Murai is the general manager of the Billings Hotel and Convention Center and says he has already booked dance competitions and fundraisers for 2025.
It brings some more revenue down to the south side here, generate some tax dollars.
The City Council approved the South Billings Urban Renewal Association recommendation to contribute about $460,000 in tax increment finance money to the $4.9 million addition.
We felt that that was one of the better things we could do to help stimulate business development in that south side.
The Billings Chamber of Commerce says about 2.6 million visitors spend close to $621 million in Billings each year and expects that to increase with the new convention center able to handle events for up to 1,000 people.
Probably the biggest convention center in a four-state area, and it will be able to attract a lot of the bigger conventions that they haven't been able to have in Billings here. They went someplace else.
The gymnasts already can't wait to compete in their hometown.
It means everything. When the kid comes to a meet and they have a feeling that they're excited, hopefully for the future we can have a meet every year, and it's going to draw tons of families.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Temperatures finally began to warm for you in eastern Montana today, but as we get into the next couple of days, the winds will become a bigger concern, especially in areas to the west. The Livingston, Big Timber areas could certainly be looking at gusts of 50, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour by the time we get into the early part of the weekend. Temperatures also will continue to warm up as we get into the next few days, but all of that's going to change by later in the weekend when we pick up a chance of rain or snow showers. Details coming up.
After months of hearings, a Republican-led state legislative committee has come out with its final list of proposed bills to respond to conflicts over the proper role of the judicial branch. Well, opponents of the bills are already calling them attacks on judicial independence. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian has a closer look at some of the proposals.
Created just 8 months ago, the Senate Select Committee on Judicial Oversight and Reform wrapped up its work on Wednesday. Altogether, it proposed 27 bills that together would make a significant change in how Montana's judiciary operates.
I think it would be huge, but I also think that we need to have our judiciary fair and impartial.
Senate President Jason Ellsworth, a Republican from Hamilton, created the committee in April. After a series of court rulings he argued had overstepped the judiciary's authority. Republican Senator Barry Usher, the committee's vice chair, said that people he's talked to identify 2 bills from the committee as the most important. One would create a court of chancery, a new state-level court to take over cases dealing with business and land use and challenges to law's constitutionality. The other would require judges to run for election with party labels.
You know, whether or not you believe in the parties that we have, it helps identify who the person's core beliefs are.
From the beginning, Democrats refused to participate in the committee, saying they didn't want to legitimize what they considered attacks on the judicial branch. Before the committee met Wednesday, Democratic lawmakers joined former Governor Mark Roscoe and former District Judge James Reynolds in a news conference, calling proposals like partisan judicial elections a threat to the judiciary's independence and vowing to fight back.
This is really a poorly disguised dog whistle for how do we get control of virtually everything so we can do everything we want to do our way.
Each of these bills are part of a system that injects politics into the courtroom. And what we have to do is we have to be on a united front saying Montanans, they care about fair and impartial courts.
Usher said he agreed with the goal of independent courts, but that he felt the courts have already been politicized.
There's a lot of people in our voter base that believe that our judiciary in this state has leaned one way or the other inappropriately and have weighed in on things that they should not weigh in on.
Of course, all the bills proposed by the committee still have to go through the full legislative process, so it'll be until next spring before we have a full picture of how many of these proposed reforms go forward. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
The Washington Commanders continue to be front and center of Congress recently. Lately, it's been over the legacy behind their old Redskins logo, a logo that has great significance here in Montana. Now it's over the need for a new stadium. Joe St. George explains why this rare situation is ending up in the nation's capital.
What does the United States Congress have to do with football? Well, for one NFL team, the future of where they play their games is directly tied to legislation. here on Capitol Hill. The team in question is the Washington Commanders, who currently play their football games in Maryland. The team's owner, Josh Harris, has made no secret that he wants a new stadium, and leaders in the District of Columbia want the team to return to D.C. to play their games. There's one hiccup, though. The land where a new stadium could be built is the same land where the Commanders' old stadium, RFK, is located. But that land is currently controlled by the federal government, and Congress needs to sign off on transferring the land to the District of Columbia in order for the city to launch a possible bid for a stadium. This week, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was on Capitol Hill to discuss the issue, which has not been an easy process for the league or the Commanders. Initially, Republican Senator Steve Daines of Montana blocked legislation because he wanted the Commanders' name to go back to what it used to be. And then there are Maryland lawmakers who are less inclined to support a stadium leaving their state, and it appears they want something in exchange for their votes. The Washington Post reports that Maryland seeks D.C.'s Air National Guard Squadron, an RFK deal. It remains unclear if the District of Columbia would be willing to give that up in exchange for a possible new stadium. There is a bit of a deadline here for the NFL and the Commanders. While legislation giving land to D.C. for a possible new stadium has already passed the House, it has to pass the Senate before January 3rd. That's when the new Congress takes over. If it doesn't pass the Senate before then, the entire process will have to start over. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
Still to come on the MTN 430 News here on Q2, a win for Win. The farming and ranching community uniting behind one Montana family as they navigate through a very challenging time. That story in just a bit. But first, it's going to feel a lot like spring this weekend. It has the full 7-day forecast right after the break.